Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone podcast. My name is Kathy. We are continuing with our discussion of the December 29th, 2022 Affidavit of Probable Cause signed under oath by Detective Brett Payne, which was relied on by the judicial officer, Judge Megan E. Marshall, to issue a warrant for Mr. Kohberger's arrest that same day in connection with the crimes at 1122 King Road. We're going to turn to the bottom of page 11 because there is a beginning of a sentence here that starts at the bottom of 11 and goes into 12. And it reads, as part of this investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine cellular devices that utilized cellular towers in close proximity to King Road residents on November 13th, 2022, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. After determining that Kohberger was associated to both the 2015 white Elantra and the 8458 phone, investigators reviewed these search warrant returns. A query of the 8458 phone in these returns did not show the 8458 phone utilizing cellular tower resources in close proximity to the King Road residents between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Based on my training, experience, and conversations with law enforcement officials that specialize in the utilization of cellular telephone records as part of investigations, individuals can either leave their cellular telephone at a different location before committing a crime or turn their cellular telephone off prior to going to a location to commit a crime. This is done by subjects in an effort to avoid alerting law enforcement that a cellular device associated with them was in a particular area where a crime is committed. I also know that on numerous occasions, subjects will survey an area where they intend to commit a crime prior to the date of the crime. Depending on the circumstances, this could be done a few days before or for several months prior to the commission of a crime. During these types of surveillance, it is possible that an individual would not leave their cellular telephone at a separate location or turn it off since they do not plan to commit the offense on that particular day. On December 23, 2022, I applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records between November 12, 2022 at 12 a.m. and November 14th at 12 a.m. for the 8458 phone held by the phone provider AT&T, and then in parentheses, approximately 24 hours preceding and following the time of the unalivings, end of parentheses. And then going into the next paragraph, it says here, on December 23, 2022, pursuant to that search warrant, I received records for the 8458 phone from AT&T. And we're going to stop our discussion of page 12. We will address this final 2 lines approximately at the bottom of page 12 in our next presentation discussing page 13. But if I could provide some commentary here, some opinions, pure speculation, rhetorical questions that I provide completely pursuant to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, freedom of speech based on nothing other than what is provided here. First, earlier in the PCA, the 2015 Elantra was discussed. It was decided that based on surveillance from multiple cameras in Moscow, in Pullman, Washington, and the surrounding area, that putting together these various pieces of camera footage, that it was one car, 2015 white Elantra belonging to Mr. Kohberger, that left Pullman, Washington, traveled to Moscow, Idaho, before the commission of the crimes, was seen in the area of the 1122 King Road residence just prior to and after the crimes, and returned to Pullman, Washington, where Mr. Kohberger was residing at that time. That's why we're seeing the 2015 white Elantra referenced here, I believe. And then the 8458 phone. Earlier in the PCA, we learned that Mr. Kohberger had been stopped by law enforcement in Moscow in August of 2022. And at that time, it was learned that he had a cellular phone, and the last four numbers of that phone was the 8458 phone. Then we see here that the large first full paragraph of page number 12 is based largely on assumptions. It begins here, based on my training, experience, and conversations with law enforcement officers that specialize in the utilization of telephone records as part of the investigation. He then says individuals could either leave their cellular phones at different locations before committing a crime or turn their cellular phones off prior to going to a location to commit a crime. There are no facts to back this up. For example, there's no even details of who did Detective Payne speak with, what were their credentials to give this sort of an opinion, and then further, to say that this is done by subjects in an effort to avoid alerting law enforcement that a cellular device associated with them was in a particular area where a crime is committed. Again, there's nothing here to back up this statement by Detective Payne. And then where he says further, I know that on numerous occasions, subjects will survey an area where they intend to commit a crime prior to the date of the crime, and then depending on the circumstances, this could be done a few days before or for several months prior to the commission of the crime. There's nothing to back this up. He's saying, based on his experience, which at the beginning of the PCA, paragraph 1, he said that he had been qualified to serve as a peace officer 4 years earlier before being made lead detective in this quadruple unaliving. Doesn't say how long he worked as a peace officer, gaining this experience that he is now basing here in the Affidavit of Probable Cause at page 12 in an attempt to convince the judicial officer to issue that warrant. There have been some reports that he had only been working for the Moscow Police Department for 2 years, a little bit more than 2 years possibly, and that was his first job in law enforcement as a civilian law enforcement officer. He had worked in the military before, where there is not the due process privileges that citizens have when there is an investigation or when there is a crime that is charged. And then he goes on to say that based on these types of surveillance, it is possible that an individual would not leave their cellular telephone at a separate location or turn it off since they do not plan to commit the offense on that particular day. Again, where is the facts anywhere to back up this statement? One would expect that every single word could be backed up with facts. Then we see that on December 23rd, that Detective Payne applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records regarding the 8458 phone held by the provider AT&T. We're going to go on to the next page and learn that Detective Payne is going to rely on the information that he has received regarding the 8458 phone very heavily in persuading successfully Judge Megan E. Marshall to issue the warrant for Mr. Kohberger's arrest. This will now conclude this episode of the Indie Zone. Please join us next time where we will pick up at page number 13 of the Affidavit of Probable Cause. Thank you for joining us here today.